and that's when Nia screamed my name.
She was my bestie.
Come to the front door!
Get up, bro! Get up!
Echoes call from hollow halls, a voice that creeps and softly crawls. Time stands still, the air is...
This is Shanquella Robinson, a 25-year-old entrepreneur from Charlotte who traveled to Mexico with friends in October 2022 and never made it back alive. Her death, first dismissed as alcohol poisoning, was later revealed to be the result of a brutal assault caught on video. But that is not the only case. There are other disturbing stories that reveal just how quickly a trip, a night out, or even a moment with friends can turn into tragedy. These are 6 most disturbing videos caught on camera. On the evening of Sunday, the 22nd of July, 2018, the Bay Area Rapid Transit System in Oakland was busy with commuters moving between trains. Among them were 3 sisters, 18-year-old Nia Wilson, her sister Tasha, and her other sister Latifah. They had spent the day with family in Concord celebrating their aunt, who had been diagnosed with a terminal illness, and were now heading home. The sisters were chatting and laughing, unaware that a stranger had already singled them out. Cameras inside the station later revealed a man in a white and gray hoodie watching them closely. He had boarded the same train, sitting near them, keeping his sunglasses on as he observed every move they made. For nearly 15 minutes, he stayed in the background, silent, waiting. Passengers around him thought nothing of it, but he had already decided on his target. At about 9:35 that night, the sisters arrived at the MacArthur station to transfer trains. Tasha stepped onto another train first, while Nia and Latifah paused on the platform, smiling and waving at a baby in a stroller. It was an ordinary moment, the kind you don't think twice about, but then everything changed. The man who had been following them pulled a knife and lunged. Latifah remembers hearing her sister scream "my neck" as she collapsed.
And before I know I could turn back, to me, and that's when Nia screamed my name.
Both sisters were stabbed before the attacker bolted from the platform, leaving chaos behind. A woman with the stroller quickly handed Latifah a blanket to press against Nia's wound. But within minutes, it was clear the injuries were fatal. By the time paramedics arrived, Nia was gone. Their father, Nia Wilson, received a frantic call from one of his daughters, but could barely understand what she was saying. All he caught was the word "why." He raced to the station, only to find flashing lights, ambulances, and officers everywhere. He saw Latifah being taken away, blood dripping from her arm. She told him to go check on Nia. When he reached the platform, the scene broke him. His youngest daughter's body lay still. He later said it was the hardest moment of his life. News of the killing quickly spread. Nia's mother, Alicia, drove from Sacramento in shock, praying that someone would call and say her daughter had survived. That call never came. Meanwhile, police pieced together what happened. Surveillance footage not only showed the attack, but also captured the suspect fleeing. Investigators soon discovered that the man had made a mistake. In his escape, he left behind a backpack in a nearby parking structure. Inside were personal belongings that identified him as 27-year-old John Lee Cowell, a parolee with a history of violent crimes, including assault with a deadly weapon and armed robbery. The Wilson family was left to grieve, while Latifah recovered in the hospital. She survived the stabbing, but carried deep scars, both physical and emotional. From her hospital bed, she described the attack to detectives, helping them piece together the events of that night. For nearly 12 hours after the stabbing, Cowell remained on the run. The family and community feared he might escape justice. Social media campaigns spread under the hashtag #SayHerName, a phrase originally tied to Black women lost to police violence, now carrying Nia's story across the country. Anger and heartbreak united Oakland. That same evening, more than 1,000 people gathered at the MacArthur station for a candlelight vigil, demanding justice for Nia. Then, a tip came in. An anonymous passenger on a BART train recognized Cowell and called police. Officers intercepted the train at the Pleasant Hill station, about 20 minutes away from where the killing had happened. They boarded the train and found him calmly sitting in the doorway. When asked his name, he admitted he was John Cowell. He was arrested without resistance.
Tell you in a minute. What's your name, sir? John Cowell.
In February of 2020, Cowell went on trial. His defense claimed insanity, arguing that he believed the sisters were aliens who had kidnapped his grandmother. In court, he disrupted proceedings with outbursts, shouting at prosecutors and pretending to lose control. But surveillance footage painted a different picture. He had followed the sisters carefully, planned the attack, and even changed clothes afterward to disguise himself. The jury and judge were not convinced by his act. Cowell was found guilty of murdering Nia Wilson, attempting to murder Latifah, and lying in wait, a special circumstance that proved premeditation. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. For Nia's family, the conviction brought some measure of justice, but it could never erase the pain. Her father later suffered a stroke from the stress, while her sisters worked through therapy and community support to cope with the trauma of surviving that night. The community honored Nia in powerful ways. Her funeral drew hundreds, with mourners releasing doves and remembering her bright smile. NBA star Steph Curry hosted a basketball showcase in her name, raising funds for her family. Her high school class of 2018 honored her at graduation, acknowledging the dreams she never got to fulfill. Nia had wanted to open a dance studio, and she had also considered careers as a paramedic or working in criminal justice. She was known for her kindness, her love of music, and her passion for helping others. After her death, her family created the Nia Wilson Foundation, providing resources such as self-defense classes, counseling, and outreach for young people. Her name, Nia, means purpose in Swahili. That purpose continues to live on, carried by her family, her community, and the movement her death inspired. Though her life ended tragically on the 22nd of July, 2018, her legacy is one of love, justice, and resilience. Before we go any further, I just want to ask you for a small favor. If you're enjoying the video so far, please give it a like. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time. We recently hit 100,000 subscribers, and that's all thanks to you. Our 100K special surprise was revealed, and we had many positive responses from you. Our next goal is to hit 200K before the year ends. It feels impossible, but hey, it's free to dream, right? Also, there's a hidden word somewhere in this video for you. Let's see if you can find it. Now, back to the video. On Friday the 13th of November 2015, 15-year-old Kayleigh Haywood told her dad she was heading to meet a friend. Martin drove her 10 minutes from their home in Mesham to Ibstock and dropped her outside the community college around 6 in the evening. Kayleigh was bright and popular, a second mom to her younger siblings, always chatting on Facebook and posting photos. Nothing about that goodbye felt unusual. The next morning she checked in again, asking if she could stay another night. Then her phone went quiet. For a teenager who practically lived on her mobile, the silence felt wrong. By Sunday the 15th, a stranger found a smashed iPhone on a street and rang the last number. The call reached one of Kayleigh's friends, who quickly phoned Kayleigh's mother, Stephanie. The shock hit hard. Kayleigh had told her family she was staying with that friend, but the friend had not seen or heard from her in days. There were no new posts on her social media, no replies. The family reported her missing that same day, and Leicestershire police launched a large-scale search. Detective Chief Superintendent David Sandel appealed to the public and to Kayleigh herself, urging anyone with information to come forward. Officers seized her laptop and her broken but still functioning phone, quickly piecing together the digital trail. Everything suggested Kayleigh left home in good spirits. Nothing suggested she planned to vanish. Stephanie's instincts screamed that something terrible had happened. Within 48 hours, the case escalated. Police announced they were now treating the disappearance as a murder inquiry. A friend told investigators that Kayleigh had recently begun chatting with a man on Facebook and had planned to meet him on Friday the 13th, then abruptly messaged to say she was not going.
With friends and family both saying that she was speaking to a man online in the run-up to her disappearance.
On Monday the 16th, 2 men were arrested on suspicion of kidnap after a property in Ibstock was searched. Over the next days, searches widened. Items of clothing confirmed as Kayleigh's were found across miles of countryside. Less than a day later, Both suspects were rearrested on suspicion of murder. On Wednesday, the 18th of November, around 10 at night, officers found a body in a Leicestershire field. It was later confirmed to be Kayleigh. She had been beaten to death. Her jaw and nose were broken. There were extensive injuries and defensive wounds. A post-mortem would reveal 42 fractures across her body, 16 breaks to her face, and deep lacerations to the back of her head. She had also been subjected to a serious sexual assault. The men in custody were Luke Harlow and Stephen Beedman, neighbors on the same street. In the weeks before the murder, Harlow had tried to contact multiple underage girls online. Some messages were disturbing, bragging about control and intoxicated victims. On Halloween 2015, he sent Kayleigh a friend request. Within minutes of her accepting, the chat began. In 2 weeks, they exchanged more than 2,600 messages. Both lied about their ages at first. Kayleigh soon admitted she was 15. Harlow kept pressing. He told her to keep it secret, flattered her, and pushed for a visit. They arranged to meet at his house on Friday the 13th, with plans for films and vodka. He told her to lie to her family about where she was going. Exactly what unfolded inside that house was reconstructed from forensics, neighbors, interviews, and confessions. Neighbors heard banging and crashing. At some point on the Saturday evening, Harlow ran out of alcohol and went to his neighbor for more. Beedman returned with him. There was no mention of Beedman in the message history, so Kayleigh likely had no idea he existed. In the late hours, after Kayleigh had been plied with alcohol, Harlow sexually assaulted her. She fled the house barefoot, naked from the waist down. Beedman chased her along a pathway. A witness briefly looked out and saw what he thought was a man restraining a girl, then watched them walk away, assuming it was a domestic argument. Beedman forced Kayleigh first to a car park, then toward a parkland area. She broke free and ran. He caught up. She struck him in the face with a brick. He picked up bricks and beat her to death. The cuts and bruises on his face later showed how fiercely she had fought. Once Kayleigh was reported missing, police quickly uncovered the Facebook messages, searched Harlow's house, and found Kayleigh's belongings inside. Harlow admitted Kayleigh had been there, and claimed he felt bad because of her age. He tried to distance himself, saying he went to bed drunk and left Kayleigh in the lounge with Beedman. Officers hunted Beedman down. His face was covered in scratches. At first he claimed he had left Kayleigh with Harlow. Later, in a guarded admission, he confirmed he had walked with Kayleigh and eventually revealed where her body could be found. The injuries were so severe that Stephanie and Martin were not allowed to see their daughter's face. They were permitted only to hold her hand. Formal identification was made using dental records on Friday the 20th of November 2015. Charges followed swiftly. Stephen Beedman was charged with murder and a sexual offense. Luke Harlow was charged with grooming and 2 counts of sexual activity with a child. In January 2016, hundreds lined the streets of Measham for Kayleigh's funeral. Purple bows were tied to trees, and a white horse-drawn carriage carried her coffin through the village she loved. In June 2016, their trial opened at Nottingham Crown Court before Mrs. Justice Cox. The prosecution argued that the chaos inside Harlow's house, smashed items and broken glasses, showed a violent struggle and that Kayleigh had been held against her will. Neighbors heard crashing that would have woken anyone truly asleep. After 2 weeks, the jury found both men guilty of false imprisonment in addition to the charges they had already admitted. Harlow received 12 years for grooming, sexual activity with a child, attempts to meet other underage girls, and false imprisonment. Beedman received life with a minimum term of 35 years for false imprisonment, rape, and murder. The judge spoke of Kayleigh's terror and anguish and called the crime every parent's worst nightmare, stating clearly that no blame attached to the family. In April 2021, the prison service announced that Stephen Beedman had died in custody. The cause of death was a matter for the coroner. Kayleigh's family channeled grief into purpose. They launched Kayleigh's Cause to push for stronger age verification on social media and worked with Leicestershire police on Kayleigh's love story, a short film shown to thousands of students across Britain and millions online, warning families about grooming and the risks of speaking with strangers on the internet. Kayleigh was 15 years old. Her life was stolen, but her story continues to protect others. The evening of Thursday, the 22nd of November 2018, was supposed to be one of celebration for the Moreno family. 8-year-old Cassidy Moreno and her 2 sisters had been picked up early as a reward for doing well at school. They were laughing, enjoying music, and teasing each other as their father drove them home in a black sedan. Cassidy's family described her as the kindest and funniest of girls, always making people smile. A child who loved music and television, who filled the house with laughter. Her aunt would later say Cassidy was her best friend, the kind of little girl who could brighten even the darkest day.
She was my bestie. She's just the best.
But just before the family reached home, their path crossed with a green Jeep at the intersection of 16th Street and Greenway Parkway in Phoenix. What began as a dispute at a stop sign spiraled quickly into a confrontation that would change everything. According to police and witnesses, the driver of the Jeep got out of his vehicle aggressively. Cassidy's father also stepped out. Words turned heated, and in the chaos her father pulled out a knife. Believing he was defending himself, he stabbed the other man several times before rushing back to the car where his family waited. The sedan pulled away from the intersection, but behind them, the wounded driver of the Jeep retrieved a handgun. Fueled by anger and adrenaline, he raised the weapon and fired into the back of the Moreno family's car. The crack of gunfire shattered the night, and a bullet tore through the trunk. Inside the car, Cassidy and her sisters sat terrified. The sisters later told relatives that they watched Cassidy's eyes close, saw the blood, and realized something unthinkable had happened. What had started as one of the best days of their lives had turned instantly into the worst. A witness driving by later recalled seeing a woman cradling a small child on the pavement as police arrived. Holding her tightly, refusing to let go, officers marked the ground with evidence cones, tracing shell casings back to the Jeep. The black sedan sat nearby with its doors open, the bullet hole clearly visible in the back. Medics worked quickly, rushing Cassidy to the hospital. She fought for her life, but 2 days later she succumbed to her injuries. Her death was devastating, not only to her parents and sisters but to the wider community that soon rallied around them. The driver of the Jeep was arrested the following Monday and booked into Maricopa County Jail on multiple charges, including first-degree murder. Phoenix police confirmed he was the only one facing charges, while Cassidy's father was also treated for injuries to his hand sustained during the fight. The man who had been stabbed was listed in critical condition but survived long enough to face the consequences of his actions. At the hospital, Cassidy's parents were too broken to speak publicly. Her sisters, though young, insisted that people remember her by name, not as the 8-year-old victim. They wanted her to be known as Cassidy, a bright, funny child with a big heart. Their aunts spoke for the family, saying they were deeply hurt and overwhelmed by the tragedy. They started a fundraiser to help with expenses, and stood at a makeshift memorial that quickly grew near the scene. Candles, flowers, and stuffed animals lined the sidewalk, symbols of a community grieving alongside the family. Neighbors and witnesses could not shake the image of that night. Some remembered the Jeep with evidence markers scattered behind it. Others recalled the black sedan with its lights still blinking. A Phoenix sergeant later urged the public to think carefully in moments of road rage, to stay inside vehicles and call 911 instead of letting anger escalate. His words came too late for Cassidy, but they carried the weight of a lesson written in tragedy. In the days that followed, grief settled over the Moreno household. The sisters clung to each other, replaying the moment again and again, wondering how such a joyful afternoon could have ended with their little sister gone. Their aunt spoke of her as the goofiest little girl, one who loved to make people laugh, and had a future full of possibility. Friends and strangers alike stopped at the memorial, leaving prayers and messages, promising to remember Cassidy's name. For the investigators, the case became evidence charts, timelines, and courtroom filings. They measured bullet trajectories and gathered witness statements. But beyond the paperwork lay the unanswerable, the senseless loss of an innocent child. The prosecutors prepared to argue intent and premeditation, while the defense would claim fear and self-defense. Yet no matter how the legal proceedings unfolded, one truth remained. A family would never again hear Cassidy's laugh or see her light up a room. The community vowed that her story would not be forgotten. Parents hugged their children tighter. Drivers thought twice about letting anger spill into violence, and strangers donated to support a family now living with an unimaginable hole in their lives. Cassidy Moreno, remembered not just as a victim of road rage, but as a vibrant little girl, left behind a legacy of love, laughter, and a painful reminder of how quickly lives can be shattered. It was just after 7 o'clock in the morning on Wednesday, the 12th of October 2022, when cameras outside the San Marino apartments in Old Town Scottsdale captured a man stepping into the daylight. He was dressed in a white shirt, jeans, and white shoes. At first glance, he looked like anyone heading off to work on a weekday morning. A truck can be seen pulling away nearby, adding to the sense of normalcy. But this man was not leaving for a job. He was leaving behind a crime scene. According to investigators, in the hours between 4 in the morning and shortly before he was caught on camera, he had carried out a brutal assault on a 70-year-old woman who lived in the complex. The victim did not know him. The details of what happened were not fully released to the public because of the nature of the crime and her age, but police made it clear it had been violent and terrifying. Weeks went by with no arrest. Detectives combed through surveillance, interviewed residents, and eventually decided to release footage of the man leaving the complex. Scottsdale police issued a public appeal, asking anyone who recognized him to come forward. Officers described him as a person of interest and a potential witness who might know something, carefully choosing their words to protect the investigation while making clear the urgency of finding him. The video shocked neighbors. Residents of the luxury apartments had already received an email about the incident, but seeing the figure on screen unsettled many. Some admitted they had never thought twice about leaving windows open during the cooler fall months, but now police were urging caution. Enjoy the weather, they said, but make sure to secure doors and windows at night or when away from home. The appeal worked. Acquaintances of the man in the video recognized him and gave his name to police. Officers followed up at an address connected to him and realized the match was too strong to ignore. The man in the white shirt was 37-year-old Kenneth Hearn, a documented gang member with a long criminal history. Detectives described him as a violent offender who had now committed another violent act. They decided they could not wait. A search warrant was prepared. On Friday, the 6th of January 2023, police tracked Hearn to an apartment complex near West Roosevelt Street and North First Avenue. Officers surrounded the unit and ordered him to come out. At first, a woman and a child appeared and were escorted to safety. Their connection to Hearn was unclear, but their removal gave officers a chance to focus on the standoff.
Get some intel for me. Scottsdale police, search warrant. Now you're inside. Come to the front door. Come to the front door.
Negotiators shouted for him to exit with his hands up. To assess the situation, one officer deployed a drone into the apartment. Almost immediately, Hearn opened fire, apparently believing the police had fired first. Gunshots rang out in the confined space. Sergeant Scott Gilbreth, a 19-year veteran of the department's Special Assignment Unit, was struck. He was rushed to the hospital, treated for his injuries, and later released. In the confusion, Hearn managed to escape. He jumped from a window and vanished. For a brief time, it seemed he had slipped through the dragnet, but now he was not just a suspect in a sexual assault. He was wanted for the attempted murder of a police officer. His flight would not last long. The very next day, Saturday, the 7th of January 2023, officers tracked him again, this time to another apartment complex near Rural Road and Lakeshore Drive, about 20 miles away. They waited until he left and moved toward a nearby parking lot before closing in. Commands were shouted. Put your hands up. Get on the ground. Hearn ignored them, keeping one hand near his pocket. He pulled out a firearm, forcing the officer's hands. Shots were fired.
Get on the ground.
Hearn went down. Officers quickly moved in, securing the weapon and calling for medics. He was transported to a hospital alive, but later died from his injuries. Later that same day, investigators confirmed through DNA evidence that he had been the man responsible for the attack on the 70-year-old woman back in October. For the victim, the confirmation brought a measure of closure. For the officers, it underscored the danger they faced when confronting an armed man determined not to return to prison. And for the community, it was a grim reminder of how quickly safety could be shattered in the most ordinary of places, a quiet apartment complex on a cool Arizona morning. Lately, some unsolved cases have been weighing heavy, and one that will not let go is the death of Shanquella Robinson. Her story is as bright as it is heartbreaking. Born on January 9, 2097, she grew up in Charlotte, North Carolina, a joyful, driven young woman with a heart for people and big plans for herself. She graduated from Winston-Salem State University in 2018, and by 2022, had already launched 2 ventures, a children's braiding service called Exquisite Babies and an online clothing boutique. She loved to travel, to laugh, and to take care of others. That is the young woman her mother, Salamandra, describes with pride. In late October 2022, Shanquella joined a group of 6 others for a trip to Cabo San Lucas. The getaway, timed around birthday celebrations for 2 in the group, was set at a luxury villa called Villa Linda 32. All marble floors, a rooftop deck with Sea of Cortez views, a pool with a swim-up bar, even a private chef. Friends from college were on the roster. Some were closer with one another than with Shanquella. One, Kayleigh, had often been at her family home and was considered a longtime friend. They arrived on Friday, the 28th of October. Shanquella posted upbeat moments on her story, looking like any 25-year-old savoring a vacation. One clip from that first night raised eyebrows in hindsight. She lay in a hammock, apparently passed out, while Kayleigh filmed and joked about having their first casualty. At the time, it read like harmless ribbing among friends. In retrospect, it stings. That evening, Shanquella spoke with her mother by phone. She sounded great and talked about tacos and the chef. Salamandra told her she loved her and would talk the next day. It was the last time they spoke. The next day, Saturday, the 29th of October, Shanquella posted again, teasing her friends for taking too long to get ready to swim. She sounded cheerful, eager for the day. Soon after, everything shifted. Shortly after 2 in the afternoon, Salamandra received a call from Kayleigh. He said Shanquella was unwell, that a doctor had been called to the villa, and he suggested alcohol poisoning. A physician arrived just after 3, and, according to reports, found Shanquella dehydrated and disoriented but stable. The doctor recommended a hospital. The group insisted on treatment at the villa. Around 4:13, Shanquella suffered a seizure. Her pulse dropped, then faded into cardiac arrest. Paramedics performed extensive resuscitation efforts, rounds of CPR, medications, and defibrillation shocks. At 5:57 in the evening, she was pronounced dead. Local authorities initially accepted alcohol poisoning as the cause, noting no obvious injuries in the first report. The group returned to the United States quickly. Some stopped by the Robinson home in Charlotte with condolences and belongings. Salamandra later said every person told a slightly different version of events. One said she was found on the floor. Another said she was in bed. Another said a maid found her. The one detail that remained consistent was alcohol poisoning. On Thursday, the 10th of November, the autopsy results upended that narrative. The report concluded a severe spinal cord injury and atlantoaxial instability, the kind of broken neck that causes rapid death, often within minutes. Shanquella's body showed signs of trauma her mother said were visible to the eye. The contrast between an hour of in-villa care and a fatal neck injury posed agonizing questions. 5 days later, a 22-second clip surfaced online. It appeared to be inside the villa. The footage shows a woman, identified publicly by many as Shanquella, being punched, thrown, and dragged while she does not fight back. A voice off-camera eggs the scene on. The video does not show what preceded the attack or everything that followed, but coupled with the autopsy, it led to public outrage and renewed pressure.
At least something. At least fight back, something.
Get up, bro. Get up.
Mexican authorities reopened the investigation. On Wednesday, the 23rd of November, prosecutors in Baja California Sur obtained an arrest warrant for a person described as the direct aggressor seen in the video, under a feminicide charge, Mexico's gender-based homicide statute. Officials said this was not a spontaneous quarrel, it was a direct aggression. The process, complicated by jurisdiction, requires coordination with the United States on extradition or parallel prosecution. The FBI has been involved, and a civil suit has been discussed by the family's attorney as a way to force transparency and accountability while criminal proceedings inch forward. Theories have swirled about motive, from jealousy to money, including unverified claims that Shanquella may have paid for the trip and was never reimbursed. What is known is simpler and heavier. A young woman went on vacation with people she trusted and never came home. Her mother had to bury a daughter whose last day alive was captured in fragments of video, in official documents that do not match the first story told, and in too many unanswered calls. For the Robinson family, justice means more than headlines. It means the truth of what happened at Villa Linda 32 on that last Saturday in October. It means accountability for everyone who watched, filmed, spoke, or stayed silent. And it means honoring who Shanquella really was, beyond the viral clip and the rumor mill, as a daughter, a friend, a builder of dreams, and a life cut short. She did what so many of us do when the day winds down and the city starts to feel a little sharper around the edges. She walked a friend to the subway, two women, shoulder to shoulder, heading toward 9th Avenue on a Monday night because it felt safer to move together under the streetlights. That small decision, the kind you make a dozen times a week in New York, was supposed to be a precaution. It was supposed to keep them out of harm's way. It did not. Teresa is 31. Not long ago, she had been in Taiwan, staying with her parents, deciding what to do next. She had come back to New York only a month earlier, chasing the same promise that draws so many people in, a chance to build a career, to make a mark, to do the work she trained for. In her case, exhibition design. It is a profession that marries storytelling with space, where every wall and walkway is a conversation with the visitor. She arrived with a plan and a portfolio, the kind of quiet optimism that propels you through apartment hunting, interviews, and long commutes. Her mother's caution traveled with her. "Be careful," she had said. "There is so much violence against Asians right now." Teresa heard the warning, tucked it away, and tried to believe that care and common sense would be enough. On that night, it was not. As she and her friend neared the avenue, a woman they did not know drifted into their path. She was talking to herself, to the wall, to no one in particular. And yet somehow to them, the words came hot, ugly, and escalating fast. "Take off your masks," she demanded. Then the attack. Swift, senseless. A hammer raised, a skull cracked. Teresa says she touched her hair and felt the warm, slick rush that tells your body something has gone terribly wrong before your mind has caught up. That is a lot of blood, she remembered thinking. Moments like these fold time in strange ways. In the video frame of the surveillance camera, it happens quickly. In the body, it goes on forever. Teresa and her friend did not crumble. They fought back. They wrestled the hammer away and shouted for help. People heard them. Workers from a nearby restaurant ran out with a bottle of water so she could wash her face. A small kindness that cuts through chaos. It is something you remember later. After the sirens and the stitches, when your mind combs the scene for proof that the world still holds neighbors and not only threats. 7 stitches closed the wound in her head. They could not close the other one. The Police Hate Crimes Task Force opened another file in a stack that has grown too quickly. Officers say attacks on Asians have surged, a 400% jump from the same period a year earlier. That number is a blunt instrument, like the one that found her. But it does tell a truth about what it means to move through certain streets in certain bodies. It explains why she cannot shake the fear that grabbed her by the scalp and refused to let go. After the hospital, the questions flood in. Why her? Why then? What could have been done differently? There are no satisfying answers, only pieces. She and her friend thought they were doing the safe thing. The attacker, according to Teresa, spiraled through insults, shouted orders about masks, then violence, an unprovoked assault, the kind that feels disconnected from anything you can plan for. People who live in cities build little rituals to protect themselves, crossing to the bright side of the street, walking in pairs, avoiding the empty block, holding your keys a certain way. But randomness breaks rituals. That is part of what makes it so hard to process. It does not slot neatly into a lesson learned. The practical choices come next, and they are as cruel as they are pragmatic. She came to New York to work. Now she cannot stop thinking about the blood in her hair, about the way the world tightened around her in an instant. She is packing again, this time not for opportunity, but for safety. She will return to Taiwan, at least for now. It is not a declaration that New York has beaten her. It is a recognition that healing sometimes needs distance, and that the cost of staying cannot be measured only in rent and subway fare. It is the cost of stepping out your door with your shoulders braced against the possibility of another blow. She says she blacked out for a second. These blanks are how trauma writes itself into memory. There are sharp fragments, her hand at her scalp, the taste of metal in her mouth, the restaurant worker's voice saying, "Here, wash your face." Then there is the fog where minutes hide. The body's way of protecting itself robs you of the narrative you replay to make sense. In that space, fear multiplies. What you cannot remember, you imagine. What you imagine, you relive. It is tempting to make this a story about the city at large, about the numbers, about policy and patrols and the mechanics of prevention. Those are necessary conversations. They just do not touch the part of the story that lives in her. The part where her mother's warning, so ordinary and loving, rings in her ears. Please be careful. There is so much crime against Asians. It is one thing to hear that from a distance. It is another to stand on 9th Avenue, skin split and throbbing, and feel that warning puncture the illusion that you can outrun the news. Teresa speaks softly about what she wants now. She wants the violence to stop. She wants to feel like she can walk to a train with a friend and talk about small things. Dinner plans, job leads, the weather turning, and not have those words interrupted by a stranger's rage. She wants to design spaces that invite people to linger and learn. The future she imagined is paused, not erased. She says if the right job appears, if the city feels livable again, she will come back. That promise is its own act of faith. That the place that hurt you can also heal you. That the same streets that took something from you might someday return something. In the meantime, there are stitches to remove, headaches that linger, sleep that will not come, and the long work of unlearning the flinch. There are friends who will walk her to the airport the way she walked someone to the train, and family waiting at the other end with the gentleness that brings the breath back into your body. There is, too, the knowledge that strangers came when she called, that people in a restaurant left their stations to help, that for every blow there was a hand extended. The footage of the attack does not show what came before or after. That is always the limitation of these recordings. They catch the blow. They do not catch the way you brace against the next one, or the way you rebuild your days. Teresa's story is not only the seconds in which a hammer fell, it is the months of effort that preceded them, and the months that will follow. It is the decision to seek a life in a place that can be both beautiful and brutal, and the decision to step back when brutality wins the day. She is leaving, for now. She is not the first to leave, and will not be the last. The city keeps moving. The trains still run. People still pair up at night and walk each other to the subway. That will not change. What might change is whether everyone who makes that choice can do it without rehearsing the worst case in their heads. Teresa asked for something simple after she counted her stitches and measured her fear. She asked that the violence stop. It is a small sentence that requires a big response, and it is where her story, for the moment, must rest. Between the place she loved enough to come back to, and the place she needs to be to feel whole again. With this last footage comes the end of this episode as well. If you learned something here, then don't forget to subscribe to the channel. We upload almost daily videos like these, so you don't want to miss out on what's happening in the world. And if you don't want to wait until the next video, there will be more on your screen in about 3 seconds. I'll see you there. I'm out.